Welcome, friends, to episode 340 of Color Magic, your Magic Gaming podcast where we talk about all types of issues that affect gamers at and away from their gaming tables and computers. I am your host, PowrDragn, and somehow, hopefully, still alive and not just burned out by the sun down in Texas. Still got my main man, Brian Sonic. How's it going, dude?
Avoiding the sun as much as possible.
Hey, you're avoiding the sun. I got to be careful breathing the air up here. There's a bunch of wildfires and smoke going on.
With that Dallas that's just par for the course.
Yeah, it's tough life up here, man. But at least it's not 1,000,000 degrees. So, I guess we give and take a little bit each, I suppose. Oh man, we have a lot to cover this week because there was a bunch of news out of GenCon for several things. There's some crazy Magic news. There's some wild video game stuff. Like, man, we're gonna have to hustle through a lot of topics. So before we get into all that, I want to remind everybody, if you want to support the show, we'd really appreciate it if you go over to patreon.com/colormagic. Just help us out for a little bit. And you'll also get other behind the scenes episodes, if you want to call them that. Just fun stuff pre-show that we're talking about that doesn't get covered on the show. Sometimes we go a little more in-depth on the topics. Sometimes it's just crazy new stuff. I think this week there's some lore on us, I guess, telling some different stories that are unrelated. So check all that out if you are a patron. And if you are a patron, be sure to go listen to those because you just get more stuff if you need something to listen to during the week. But also, we have a sponsor, ManaPool.com. You should check them out. They're a really cool place to go buy your Magic cards. They're just like the other site where you can go and pick between different vendors or whatever. But honestly, their optimizer is so much better and their service is really good. So you should go check them out. And if nothing else, you'll be supporting somebody that supports the show over at ManaPool.com. But dude, let's hop into some Universes Beyond stuff, but for D&D, not for Magic this week. One of the big announcements coming out of GenCon was during WotC's presentation for Dungeons and Dragons stuff, which we talked previously about how they had the whole building rented to do a bunch of crazy D&D things. But one of the things they talked about was Universes Beyond coming to D&D, which to me was interesting because we've already had D20 based role-playing games for a billion different things because we went through that whole D20 era and open source license and all that. So it's not that weird, but it did show me that the name as a brand, Universes Beyond, almost fires up more emotion for people than even what it actually is, which I found to be really interesting. But, I mean, some people were excited because one of the things they talked about was like, hey, what if we had Star Wars coming down the pipe? Which then
and
got
that feels like not confirmation, but eventual confirmation that we're going to have Star Wars and Magic in the very probably foreseeable future.
Yeah, that was the thing, right? Because now Magic players go, wait. If Wizards can already get Star Wars for that, can we get Star Wars for us?
Yeah, I can't, because really that's going to be... Gaming is really the salvation of the Star Wars brand. Because let's be honest, when was the last good Star Wars movie? I've lost track. there hadn't been a Star Wars movie that made money I think Solo technically made money, but even then, I don't think anybody would say it was good.
It was so weird because like hardcore fans seem to have hated Solo, but I thought it was a fine movie. But I guess I'm also not a hardcore Star Wars fan, so I don't know.
And to keep the franchise going, you somehow got to figure out how to please both audiences.
Sure. And I'll be honest, like, now, the third of the new movies, that lasts like 15 minutes. I was just like, what are we doing? But as a grouping, the most recent three, I didn't mind. I kind of enjoyed them. But I'm also not somebody who's overly attached to the older Star Wars stuff. So I can totally see where the differences are and who likes the thing and who doesn't. But yeah, I'm with you. I think they have to figure out something in the gaming department because even some of their own video games haven't done great.
Yeah, and Ubisoft blaming the Star Wars brand for being in choppy waters. Like, wait, your company's pretty choppy too.
Yeah, just in general. But yeah, I don't know. To me, I just felt like, okay, we've kind of done this before, but all right, let's just see what it's about. If it brings more things in that people can play with and enjoy or incorporate or not or whatever, that's fine. Because and we touch on this a little bit in the pre-show. So hey, patrons, you can go listen to us break this down a little bit further. But honestly, the difference between a D&D experience and a Magic experience is that you can opt out or opt in of literally every single aspect of your game at a D&D table. With Magic, unless you've done a lot of extra work in promotion and setting things up or whatever, you're kind of just at the whims of whatever the formats are.
Yeah, if you're
And
playing standard, Universes Beyond is legal and you cannot escape it.
yeah, exactly. Right.
I
Unless
think we
you
determined like there's only what was the format where Universes Beyond isn't legal?
there's a couple, there's like pre-modern and there's old school and like a handful, but not a
So
lot. Right.
exactly. So for
Yeah.
most people, if you want to play what most people are playing, Universes Beyond is unavoidable at this point.
Yeah. Whereas when you sit down to a role-playing table, usually you're already discussing all the different things you want to do before the game starts anyway, right? We're going to do this type of combat. We're going to do this for experience building. We're expecting to play this long. We're going to be more story driven than combat driven, whatever the case is. And everybody agrees to that and you sit down and play. So I don't think this will be nearly as big of a deal for the role playing group. And again, I think also some people who are having whatever opinions they're having right now also weren't around during the whole D20 era, whatever. So this seems really new to them. But I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. I think to your point, it's more of an implication of, okay, let's keep an eye on how many licenses or what licenses D&D is able to work
Yeah,
with.
also said the World of Warcraft, like, have we? I feel like World of Warcraft should have been in Magic already.
Bro, I've been saying that for the last year. If we find out that World of Warcraft is coming next year or in 2028, like it would make perfect sense. Right? It's literally orcs, paladins,
Yeah,
like
it is.
whatever. Elves, it's
This
right
is
in our
same
wheelhouse.
setting, and it feels like the ones that have worked the best have been the ones that still fit, like Lord of the Rings, Avatar.
Hell,
These fit with the Magic theme setting of orcs, goblins, fireballs, all those things.
the dude that's just stepping down from president of Watson used to be at Blizzard.
Right? So
Like,
it
you
just
know what I mean? So it's like this feels like this conversation had to have been had at some point.
right.
Like now, what's come of it, or if it's going to happen, I don't know. But it would be nearly impossible for that conversation to have not have come up at some point.
I mean, maybe Hearthstone is still a stumbling block, possibly.
Maybe that would be fair.
Obviously, unlike a lot of these companies, like clearly, Disney does not care if they put out multiple Star Wars
Yeah.
products on top of each other. They said they want if you play, watch, or consume any form of content, Disney wants Star Wars in front of your face. As we said, they have to because the movies are losing money every time. So gaming is really the only place where Star Wars is making the money at this point.
Hell, I'll be honest. I don't even know why we haven't had like a StarCraft secret layer yet. That feels like a thing that could have happened. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I think the
Maybe
biggest
again because they have done a lot of StarCraft related stuff with Hearthstone. Maybe they don't want to.
yeah, that's possible. They
want
might just
to go
hold
with
to
the
their
Magic
licenses
fan base,
tighter, you know. But yeah, I would say the biggest takeaway though for me is
Paramount has no problem putting to at least 2 Star Wars card games or Star Trek
sure.
card games into play at the same time.
No, I think keeping an eye on this whole thing, Universes Beyond D&D, is really for the licenses, right? Just because once that relationship is there, the door becomes easier to have those in Magic. And vice versa, right? As we're talking about, there's already established relationship with Warhammer, right? With Nintendo, or I mean not Nintendo, Nickelodeon with Avatar and stuff, right? Like, could you get any of those in D&D? Like, quite possibly, right? Could you get Final Fantasy as a D&D thing? That door's open. They've already made artwork for all of it and whatever, so maybe. I think this is a whole different thing of what things could look like going forward. So very, very interesting overall. But let's go ahead and get into the soapbox because this one I found is kind of funny, actually. So there's a site I came across called the Retro Codex, just exactly, spelled how it sounds. But somebody took the time to put together this huge site broken down by decades, 50s to 2020s. And it basically goes through all the stuff of from when, if you'd have graduated high school through this decade, whatever the popular things we were taught that weren't true, or things that we believed as a society that either weren't true or subsequently found to be not true. And man, there is so much stuff on here to the point that they've even had people getting upset. So when you try to click on a decade, it has a pop up. It says, wait, before you view the results, here are a few disclaimers. Your results may not fully reflect your lived experiences. Many of the results will include urban legends or other cultural misconceptions that were already disproven, and you just may not have been taught them correctly. And what counts as factually accurate information is always evolving. So, saying like, hey, this is accurate as of the day we added it to the list or whatever. But there's so much stuff, dude. Like being somebody who graduated in the 90s, there was definitely the like, matadors wear red because it angers the bulls. And they're like, no, most bulls can't even distinguish colors, red from other colors. It's just you moved and the bull was mad and comes after you. Right? That's
Right.
literally it. But so many different things like that of, drinking coffee will stunt your growth. That was a thing we were told. No research that says that's a thing.
Of course, the one sci-fi has used for decades. You only use 10% of your brain.
Yep, that's another one. But it's a pretty interesting because again, I think at least half of these that I've clicked on, I've either known or learned at some point to know that it wasn't true. But there's still some on here I just hadn't thought about, that I'm like, oh, okay, sure. I guess this makes sense. Like bats are blind. It's like, well, bats functionally have eyesight. I mean, they just use echolocation because it's better and easier at night and blah, 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 you know, but it's not completely replacing their vision. They can see you, you know. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of stuff like that that people just don't know. And it kind of goes back, unfortunately, to showing how much of the American education system is just bad. Like there's some stuff we're just told, and not just, I mean, just as a society, we hear a thing at one time and we just spread it. And
Well,
that's just the
again,
thing we tell our kids.
history is written by the victors.
Sure.
So
And
really, everybody's like we're hearing a lot about this now as the Odyssey continues to break records. I mean, Homer was obviously writing for he was a fan of one side. Okay, he wasn't necessarily getting quotes from everybody. All
yeah,
right?
I mean, we see this even, and I even realized when I was growing up in Texas at the, we have private groups that make pitches that have their own leanings one way or the other that get to make the textbooks,
Exactly.
and I remember I was just telling somebody this week that I still remember when I finally went to see the Alamo and I was just like, that's it. Like you tell us the story, like it's this major mission and all these people were there and it was the last bastion to keep, the Mexican nationals from infiltrating and blah, blah, and all this.
Infiltrating the land that was theirs to
Yeah,
begin
dude.
with.
And that building, I swear it looks like it fully built. It might have held like 100 people. Like, it feels like, I don't know, man. I just never been more disappointed. But even as a kid, that got me thinking about, well, what else are they not telling us the truth about? Or what else is embellished that, whatever. So yeah, and this site just sort of reinforces that. It's a really cool site though to go look at. It's called the retrocodex.com. Totally worth checking out if you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, this could be like TV tropes where it's just
Yeah. And it's deep, man. Each decade has 4 or 5 pages of stuff dedicated to it. It's just a really interesting read, and you'd
here's
be
one of my
surprised.
favorites when my math grades weren't good. Is a you won't always have a calculator in your pocket. Yeah, if you got a phone, you
Oh,
absolutely.
man. Dude, I remember being told we had to memorize parts of the periodic table because you're not always going to have access to it. And I'm like, I remember telling one of my science teachers, literally every single lab, science thing, whatever we had went to, had the periodic table on the wall.
By the way, are most people going to need it for anything?
No, not at all. We waste so much time on that stuff. Like,
If you
oh,
work in a clothing store, guess what? You're going to not need to know anything about the
nope.
periodic table.
Like, honestly, a bunch of people don't use anything beyond like algebra and geometry. You know, you need those. There's useful applications for those. But all the other stuff, unless you're going to be in the high sciences, like as a career, you're not going to use like trigonometry. I literally in high school was like, I remember telling a teacher after like one semester, I'm like, I don't need this. Like, I can't think of a time I'm ever going to need this and what I'm planning to go to college for. We're good. You know, and she was stunned because my grades were decent. And I was like, yeah, but if I just don't need it and I'm already going to have my credits to graduate, I'm solid. Yeah. But yeah, go check that out. It's the retrocodex.com. But I'm going to let you hop on because you have something that's a little sad.
Yeah, Tornado Terry's is a arcade in Fort Worth that's been in business for like 35 years, and sadly, this month they're going to go away. And it's not so much their fault as it is the city of Fort Worth because there has been construction on 377, which is the main highway that most people would take to get into their parking lot. And their road's been torn up for a long time now. And a lot of people just told, hey, we would love to come, but we just, and in addition to the road being torn up, apparently, if you looked at Google Maps, it was taking people to some park that was part of an apartment that had nothing to do with Tornado Terry. So just perfect storm of factors that they had absolutely no control over. And as a matter of fact, it's such a historic place that apparently, if you ever, I'm going to date both of us at this point, but anybody that remembers the game Dragon's Lair, which is for the
Mm-hmm.
time just incredibly innovative because it's basically, it brought, Disney level quality of animation into video games. And they actually have a Dragon's Lair banner autographed by Don Bluth, the animator of Dragon's Lair, that, of course, the creator of such movies as Pete's Dragon, Fox and the Hound, before he went to kind of found his own studio and did what kind of was really anti Disney stuff for a while. Well, don't get me started on various animation studios, but yeah, that kind of stuff. Pac Man, Frogger arcade games from the 80s. One of the sad, but it will still live on things. A lot of people are just collectors are chomping at the bit to get to bid on some of the classic video games that they have in there. So I mean, that's good that parts of it will live on, but and I feel so bad for the guys. Tornado Terry actually died apparently a couple of years ago, and his wife has been trying to keep it together ever since. And unfortunately she hasn't been able to give herself a paycheck since September of last year. She had to sell a lot of the stuff that she owned, and that including like a classic Camaro that Terry had built for her. That's how she's been living for the past year, just hoping against hope that something would turn around. And the city, obviously, we're very sorry, but the construction isn't going to finish until sometime in 2027. So it's just a sad piece of local entertainment that's going away. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate because this is a time when actually, especially like arcades that our generation goes to, they're designed for adults. They're making a huge comeback right now, but if you can't get to it, you can't get to it.
And and we talked, again on the pre-show about, how much I overplanned and overthought stuff. That was another thing. Every time we moved the shop, it was okay, do we have access for multiple roads?
Yep.
Because something could be blocked off for an event, a street party, there could be a car accident, there could be a football game blocking off the side road, whatever. So that was the type of stuff I thought about for those very reasons, because I genuinely have had thoughts of, if something like that happens, what do you do if you're tied into still a 2-year lease or a 5-year lease? Your landlord's just not magically going to let you out of it
Nope.
because there's construction. So now And you see it all the time where there's construction. People have extra signage out and extra banners to be like, "We're still open," like whatever, to try to get you to come over, despite all of that. So, I feel for them, man, because that's a tough situation to
Yeah, so
be
many
in.
people are talking about how they literally kind of grew up in this arcade. A lot of their
Yeah,
friends that they still have to this day, 30 years later, are people they met at Tornado Terry's. So it's just
yeah,
so unfortunate, and it's just you would have hoped that the city could have stepped in on that one, but I'm sure they say, obviously every business on along this route is having problems, so they probably don't want to play favorites. I was one that's been around for almost 40 years of this historic. You would have hoped maybe this will be, maybe it'll get attention, and in the future maybe they'll figure out something to prevent stuff like this.
yeah. Oh, maybe at least they can get the community to rally around them, make it easy for them on the way out. But
Yeah.
that's tough, man. That's a tough one. But all right, let's talk about what we learned this week, because honestly, both of these are kind of interesting and they both involve technology in a weird way. But if you've been on the internet for any amount of time into the nerd spaces, you've probably heard of Hank Green, or Hank Green and his brother also. I mean, I guess because they made a lot of science content that people were really into for a long time. And there were some concerns over the last, far as I could tell, at least 3 months. It may have gone longer than that. But people starting to go like, something's off about Hank. Like he's starting to sound a little different. And, this isn't his normal type of pacing. And, there were questions. And he came out this week and said, "Hey, I got to take a break from making content because he's been using AI to help with his script writing, which isn't unheard of. There's several places that do that. But he mentioned how it was making him feel, from a productivity standpoint and whatever. And he was starting to feel like he was relying on it too much because of the positivity it was creating for him, and there is a little bit of phenomenon, believe it or not, that has started to pop up where people are relying on the LLMs a little bit too much. And it's giving them this, I don't know, I guess the only way to describe it is maybe like a false sense of productivity, and you start becoming more and more reliant on it or whatever. Almost like I wouldn't say like a drug, but it's that positive feedback loop for yourself, right? Even in how those apps will talk to you, makes you feel good about your ideas and everything else. And so I kind of get it, and he said, like, yeah, I just need to disconnect for a minute, reset, think about my content, whatever. Of course, some people are attacking him over it. And hey, at least you owned up to it and you explain why, and bringing some attention to, hey, if it can get him, it can get anybody. Somebody who's been around doing this for ages, made all types of content for ages, an OG of the internet as far as science goes, and YouTube and stuff for sure. So yeah, like, would you rather your favorite guy not be using a bunch of AI? Yeah, sure. But at least he realized it and is like, yeah, I need to talk to y'all about something. And this is why I'm you're not going to see me for a minute. But yeah, I think he'll probably come back and be fine. I don't think it's a big deal, but it does show you how just using AI just as it is isn't enough, right? Like, now, admittedly, if you're using it properly and you're helping it organize your thoughts into a script or whatever, and you're cleaning it up and putting your own spin on it, fine. But he even said he was just getting lazy about it, and that's probably why he started to sound different. When you're reading or following a script that the AI put for you and it doesn't have your personal touches, people can tell. I think everybody just thinks like, oh, I'll do this and I'll pop it out and it'll be no problem. And it's like, no, people know when you don't sound like a person, or they know when you sound differently, right? Because we each speak a certain way. We have a certain inflection on certain words. We use certain phrases just because of culture, history, where we're from, And when those aren't there, or they slowly stop being there, people start noticing. They don't even know what they're noticing. They just know something's different, you know? It's like when you walk into somebody's house or whatever, and they've moved a piece of furniture that normally sits there, and you're like, something's different. I don't know why, but I know something's different. That's sort of what it is. But yeah, I do give them credit though. It at least put eyes on an issue. So hopefully more people pay attention to this because it can become a real, almost addicting thing for some folks. But all right, you have something else about Xbox?
Yeah, as Xbox tries to kind of dig itself out of an incredibly deep hole that it's been in for, according to even by their own admission, I guess since the beginning. Game Pass is really supposed to be the big thing that was going to be, hey, this is why you need an Xbox instead of a PlayStation or a Switch. And no, that is absolutely not what has been happening. They by 2026 we're hoping to have almost 80 million subscribers. They're actually at about 30 million, so that's less than half of what they thought they'd have. I'm sure they didn't just come up with that number. That is probably the number they need for it to really be popular. They've had some, just obviously some big misses on stuff they paid for. Like, of course, obviously the whole Activision Blizzard merger has kind of seen not necessarily the results they wanted. For example, Black Ops 7. You figure, oh, if you get exclusive rights to Call of Duty, possibly, okay, you're onto something. But actually, as the console exclusivity kind of goes away, they end up putting Call of Duty on both Xbox and PlayStation. And while Call of Duty did, now, to be fair, not typical Call of Duty numbers like we mentioned last week. Battlefield actually sold better last year for the first time in decades. But all of that said, I think they're still number 5 or number 6 in game sales last year. But about 80% of their sales were on PlayStation because that's how big the gap is between sales of the two consoles.
It's
Now,
also crazy though to think about, like 30 million users a month is still a giant pile of money.
right. A huge, huge pile
Because
of
isn't it
money.
like $20 a month or something?
Yeah. I
So
actually
yeah,
think, well, it's fluctuated. I think at one point it had gone up to $29.99, which people were like, wait, that's feels like way too much. So they're headed back in the other direction.
but let's say you bought it yearly and you paid $20 a month. That's still what, 600 million a month? Like that's a lot of money, man.
Right. But as an example, apparently just getting the rights to Suicide Squad, which was a colossal failure, and Jedi Survivor, which again I think got good. It was critically acclaimed. I don't know what the final sales numbers were, but just those two apparently cost them $300 million.
That's crazy.
But again, Star Wars and Warner Brothers, you ain't getting the right, because that game, literally, Suicide Squad, allows you to kill Batman.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
ain't getting that for less than a couple of 100 million.
Yeah, that's just nuts. I mean, when you
Now,
think about how big the scale is for these subscription services, it's just
and then, of course, one of the
insane.
reasons that people are pointing to is numbers show over and over that the overwhelming majority of gamers really only play 2 or 3 games a year.
Yeah, I
So
know
yeah,
I fit that.
it's awesome to have access to 200 games even if we're honest, even for $30 to have access to 200 games is, to me, not a bad price, unless of course you only play 2 or 3. And yeah, I guess when I'm not, trying to grind rank or working on some kind of content, yeah, I probably come back to Madden, NCAA football, and baseball again and again.
Well, that's exactly it, right? Because I would say, let's say on a good year for me, I might play 3, I'll call them long form AAA titles,
Right.
right? Maybe. And that's a good year. Usually it's going to be 1 or 2 and a handful of smaller games, right? Games that all cost probably $15 or less on Steam that I play for like a couple of weeks and I'm good, right? But I can tell you the last couple of years, it's been like, like Baldur's Gate, we played for over a year,
Yeah, you
you
buy
know?
Baldur's Gate. That technically is all the gaming you need for a good long time.
Yeah, that ate up all my extra time. Right now, we're messing around with Slay the Spire 2, but even then, I still have like Arena that I'm playing. I have Teamfight Tactics that I'm playing. And those are technically free to play. I just buy their like whatever they call their battle passes or whatever,
Yep.
just so I support the brands. But that's it for most of my major gaming right now. All my other stuff I bought have been like $9 titles, $10 titles, and I don't need a membership for that. Right? Like I'd be spending more on the membership than I'm actually spending buying the games. So it doesn't really make sense to. So I get it if other people have busy schedules or whatnot. Like it probably works in your case where maybe you have a family at home or kids at home so everybody can go check out different games.
Yeah, like the Xbox is upstairs because the boys, that's primarily what they play on is either Xbox and or PC.
Yeah, so that would make sense in that case because then you have
Yep.
multiple people have different preferences using it. But for a lot of people where it's just you or you and your spouse or whatever, it's like, yeah, it's probably not worth it. So I
Mhm.
kind of get it.
Yeah.
But if you do like
And
trying out a lot of games and you play a bunch, if you're playing a new game a month or something,
right.
well, then yeah, $20 is cool for that. Especially if you're playing AAA titles that cost between $50 and $70.
But if that's the product you're relying on to really save your brand, which is what Xbox kind of is, and yeah, you gonna have some problems. And they're trying to, figure out that how to make Xboxes for less than $800. They're just now again, Microsoft has enough money to where, yeah, they can
Yeah.
afford to probably take, you know, another possibly 5 to 10 years to figure this out. But you do at some point you want to start making a profit, right?
That's the
Even with
thing to me too.
Microsoft money.
This is why when we talk about, especially the video game industry, but a lot of different industries, somebody needs to go back and rescope everything. Because you're talking about just from subscriptions, right? They should be making between 6 and 7 billion a year. Like that's crazy work to be like, yeah, but that's not really enough. You know what I mean? Like somebody's gotta get in there and just revamp things or figure out where you can save money here or there because
Unfortunately,
that's
what they
crazy.
seem to be figuring out is laying people off. that's
Yeah, that's the
we're gonna
solution they land on, but I think there's better options.
we're gonna hopefully get to a point where they just even with AI they can't lay everybody. But again, they probably are gonna go
Well,
to
we're already seeing where companies that did initially lay a bunch of people off because they were going to rely on AI have learned that AI is actually more expensive in many cases than it was to keep the people.
yeah, because when AI f's up,
Yeah, well,
when it does something real
it's
stupid.
one correcting the mistakes that it has, potential legal stuff you have to pay for that it causes, and then the operation of the AI between like the servers and the costs and whatever, right? Like, and when you don't make your own bots or whatever, and a lot of that processing is outsourced, you're paying for somebody else for each query you make on it. So they're spending way more than they would just keeping the people.
There's just there's so much to having a successful product or a successful company that computers as of yet have not been able to. As I look at, try to figure out how to beat the streak, there are a bunch of people that have various algorithms, AIs, and even coming with cute names for them. And I've blanked on any of them as I said that, but yeah, I look at almost all of them they're about 45 to 50%. Yeah, no better than what a human. And I look at the beat the streak leaderboard. There's probably 20 people that have hit, let's say 20 or 30 in a row. I have yet to see any machine do anything close to that.
I believe it. Yeah, it's just a crazy time, man. But we'll see. Like I said, we're always pulling for the OGs of the industry, but sometimes, they create their own messes. So we'll see what the hell happens. But yeah, let's hop into some topics. We have a lot of interesting stuff to cover this week. The first is that there's a Baltimore man who's suing PSA. If you don't know what PSA is, they're a grading service who recently, I believe in the last couple of years, had also purchased Beckett. So the Beckett grading services are under PSA now. It's a whole thing. But this guy is basically claiming that he wants to take PSA to court for RICO charges, which,
Do what?
yeah, for those of you that don't know, to prove a RICO case, you kind of have to prove that there is a giant conspiracy to fleece people and manipulate things and whatever. Like, you have to have a lot of evidence.
That's
Like,
usually how they get gangsters. If they can't necessarily put a gun in their hand, and especially with the boss, in most cases they can't, usually it's some form of RICO. That is what they can prove. Like, okay, we're pretty sure you were involved in all of these things.
yeah, it basically is trying to prove that they built $1 billion business off of specifically deceiving and defrauding the hobbyist. Right. So they're going to have a lot to prove. Now, his basic case that he's using to try to prove it is that there can be inconsistent grading between their graders. I don't think that's enough to turn it
No.
into a thing, because like, well, there's been times that people have cracked things and sent them back in and they got a half grade higher or whatever. Like, yeah, that probably happens. Now, I will say there are other grading services that have come on the market recently, and they're doing more in-depth stuff using, like, I don't know, it's almost like a black and white, like, I don't know if it's not really an infrared scan, but some type of scan where they can see more scratches on the surfaces and things like that, that they're getting more detailed and intricate on how they're actually grading these things. So the market as a whole is changing to get better consistency. So that's one thing. But I don't know. I mean,
An inconsistency or a mistake is not going to be enough. Even if you can prove that it happened, let's say you send the same card in and get 5 or 6 different ratings. Okay, unless you can prove the same person graded it each
exactly.
time.
So
And by the way, like, because as I said, Rico is one of the things they use for mobsters. That's how they finally got the Teflon Don John Gotti. And even with that, it took them 3 or 4 trials to get John Gotti, who was obviously guilty of a million things. So yeah, good luck getting a card grading company on that.
yeah, exactly. I think you could, maybe, if enough evidence comes forward, you could find some type of charge to hit them with, but I don't think it's going to be a RICO charge.
Yeah, you
It's
had
just
to
not.
prove that they purposely were screwing people over, and
Yeah, you'd also have to make it to where, like, that was somewhere that was their actual business plan and part of their model, which how they were getting there. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things you have to prove to make that stick that, I mean, it sounds a little bit of ludicrous as a case to push for a RICO charge to begin with. So I don't even know if it'll even go to trial. But if it does, there'll likely be something way lesser that comes from it.
yeah.
And if anything, it probably ends in some type of, I don't know, a settlement group thing, whatever, class action, whatever. But
As
we'll
they
see.
say, if you got $100 and a lawyer, you can sue anyone for anything.
That's
This feel like
true.
this might be a case of that. Or
So
hey, you don't
we'll,
even need $100 anymore because now you got people like, I don't get paid unless you get
yeah,
paid.
that's true
So yeah,
too.
you
Yeah.
really you just need a lawyer, basically.
Some other fun things. We had mentioned Stream Elements was going to be potentially sold, or actually was going to shut down. And then we got the surprise announcement at the 11th hour that, hey, we might have a buyer. And then there was a lot of speculation over who it was. And then it was kind of silent for the better part of a month. Well, we just got news recently that the new owners are Razer, the people that make your fancy mouses and keyboards and everything. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that feels like that makes absolute sense.
Yeah, because people were concerned of, like, is it going to be one of these big companies, these websites? Is it a Google level thing? Is it some investment company that's just going to drive them into the ground and take all the information? You know, but with Razer, it's like, okay, this is somebody who's been around in the industry. They
Yeah,
know
they
how people use
obviously
their stuff. Hell,
they
they've sponsored a bunch of
yeah.
creators making things. So yeah,
Gamers are their customers, and they are fully aware of that.
exactly. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, Razer getting access to more of this information and whatever obviously has benefits for their company, which is probably why they wanted it. But the only thing they've said that's going to be different is if you have money anywhere in transit with Stream Elements, they're basically going to zero all those out, send you all your money to whatever accounts you have attached, and then everything else will go through or be to or from Razer after that point. But otherwise, it sounds like everything's just going to function as it was. You'll just have Razer's label on a few extra things. So it seems like if you stream Elements, you're winning. Like, this is cool. Basically, nothing changes. If anything, there may be some extra offers for streamers or whatever related to Razer because they do offer those sometimes to people on their site. So I don't know. This is kind of cool. Because I'll be honest with you, dude. Anytime I hear about a company potential shutdown and like, hey, we might have a buyer, with the way we've seen these investment firms come in and just
Yeah.
drive, whether it's Toys R Us or Red Lobster or whatever, into the ground. It's just like, man, please don't let this happen to something else in our space. We've just seen this too many times. And we ain't got necessarily a Flavor Flav that's going to come save us like they did with Red Lobster. So they would have probably just been gone.
Yeah.
So this is cool, man. I'm here for it. Which, by the way, who'd have thought in 2025, 2026, Flavor Flav would have been the most socially conscious, helpful celebrities.
Anybody that listened to his music.
Oh, that part I get.
Yeah, but
But
remember, what was it, 30 some odd years ago now when Flavor Flav told us, get up, get down, 911 is a joke in your town.
yep, for real.
He was
Hey,
one of the only, I remember seeing, I found out about that from Flavor Flav. Yeah, I started seeing it on news broadcasts. I'm talking about a decade
mhm.
later.
But dude, literally, he's out here, supporting different communities that need it. He's helped save Red Lobster. He's supporting all the women's
Right.
Olympians. I just like,
When people were shocked to find out that John Wayne was racist, like again,
yep,
Public Enemy told us
yep.
this 30 something, probably was 40 years ago
People
now.
don't know, man. When folks were rapping, they were telling stories about society.
Yeah, sure, there were a lot of people rapping about like how much money they had, what kind of car they were driving, but no, there are a lot of people that were again being these like we talk about retro codex. There's so much of what I learned as a kid, I learned from Public Enemy,
Yep, not from public schools, that's for
right?
sure. Other fun things. If you hadn't heard about the wonderful animal that's Jimothy, just like Timothy with the J, and I got to see this because I live up in the area, but there was I wouldn't even call him a cryptid because he's kind of too small to be a scary cryptid, but a sensational animal that's a raccoon. He has what they've described as some type of spinal issue. So he looks like
Yeah,
a very hunched over raccoon that kind of scurries between neighborhoods.
he's almost square. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
he
part of it.
looks very awkward. He's almost
Yeah,
as if a kid drew a raccoon.
right.
Like, that's kind of how he looks. But
And also,
apparently,
Kelly, not a cryptid, because I think a cryptid is something that hasn't been proven to
yeah, that's
exist.
also
But
true.
we know Jimothy is a real thing.
But yeah, he made the rounds on social media, became a social media sensation, and it seems like he's on T-shirts now. People making websites about him. But Wizards of the Coast got on the bandwagon, and on MTG Arena, you can get a Jimothy bundle. It comes with a fun little sticker for your account you can put on screen, and a set of sleeves with a raccoon on them. So, yeah, and they were pretty cheap too. So if you just want to participate in the Jimothy madness, go for it. Fun part is they're also going to donate, I think they said $10,000 to one of the local animal related businesses as well. So, a little something positive comes out of it to participate in some social media silliness, which I think is super fun. Because what else are you going to do? Yeah, $10,000 donated to Paws, PAWS is the name of the local charity, but it's based for animal welfare. So that's very cool too. So credit to Wizards for that one. GenCon just wrapped up, which obviously we talked about that to open the show with the D&D news. But man, this is the first time I know of that I can remember where there were major weather issues during GenCon, almost during any major gaming convention, really. But yeah, bad enough that they had part of the roof get damaged to where there was a major leak that right on the middle of the show floor. So that was something they had to deal with. But then also they had to evacuate for a short period of time because there were tornado warnings. So they took a bunch of the attendees, moved them into the football arena because Lucas Oil Stadium holds whatever, I think 60 plus thousand people or whatever. So easy to move everybody over there. And then some people, below and in different rooms or whatever to protect everybody while that blew over. My understanding is nothing too bad happened, but if you live anywhere where there's tornadoes, you hear the sirens, you got to keep everybody safe. And yeah, I don't know. Has that ever happened for you during a major event? Because I couldn't think of one that I'd attended where
Yeah,
something like
I
that's
think
happened.
I've had good luck with that too. I can't think of anything where weather really, it's not anything gaming related. I think there was a a couple of newspaper events I covered where the weather got a little wonky in the middle of it.
Yeah, I only had
No, I don't
one
think
where
I
I got
covered anything convention related.
yeah, I got woken up once, at our hotel because of a false fire alarm, but that's the closest I've had. I've never had anything like this where like instant roof damage and tornado sirens or whatever. Which, for those you don't know, there are a lot of those things basically through that whole Midwest corridor of
Yeah,
tornadoes and whatever. So, not even shocking that it happened, but once it happened, I realized, man, Gen Con's been in Indianapolis, I think, for 20 plus years now.
that sounds
And
right.
that's the first time there's been something. So, kind of wild. But I don't remember seeing any, as far as I could find, there were no major injuries, or at least nobody at the convention reported anyone at the convention having anything related to the storms happen. So, some slightly damaged product from the water, but as far as people, nothing bad. And we kind of get to wrap up on some possibly good news. I'm gonna say it with a question mark.
Right.
But there is a new secret layer coming with Hatsune Miku, and it's the first, actually the last that they're going to do in the series. It sounds like, and it's culminating in a full commander deck. Which anybody who knows about secret layer commander decks, they're all valuable and they all sell quickly. Wizard of the Coast seems to have found a way to make this print to demand or print to order in a kind of unique situation. So it sounds like for the first, I believe I read first 24 hours. I don't know how they would guarantee 24 hours. So we'll say it says the purchase window will last 24 hours with the product effectively being discontinued the next day. So there'll be a 24-hour window. However, there is some amount of product already ready to go that's already been printed. That will go out the door to the first however many people. We don't know what that number is. But then they said after that, they will still continue taking orders. So let's say there's 2,000 ready to ship out. Once they get to 2001, every person from that person on will still get it, but it won't ship until May 27 in the US and June 27 in the UK. Kind of an interesting compromise, right? Because some people are like, oh, well, that's a year away and whatever. It's like, yeah, but if the option is not get it at all, they're doing what they can, right? Because we've talked multiple
Yeah.
times about the printing issues and everything else. So I don't know, dude.
And to be fair, a lot of people, it was taking that long anyway. They just didn't know it when they
Well,
bought.
yeah, not that long, but they were taking a while.
I think I'd heard 8 to 9 months. That's almost a year.
That happened in the very beginning when they were doing it. That was definitely a thing that happened. That with the first couple of holiday releases, because there was a couple of holiday commander decks around that time, and the Advent calendar, I think, is what it was. And then they kind of got away from just doing that for issues. But I guess I ask you, if this is the way it has to be done for the foreseeable future, how do you feel about it?
I'm trying to think of something I want so bad that I'm willing to wait a year for it. But again, I say if the options are, a year or don't get it all, I guess it probably is. I would probably rather have it than not have it.
Yeah, because I thought about this and I was like, okay, I'm gonna at least I'm gonna replace Hatsune Miku with something else. Let's call it Dallas Cowboy stuff or something, right? Like something that I'm into. So to say this was a WWE one or whatever, maybe, right? How badly would I be willing to wait just to make sure I have this one time rare item? Right? Because this deck's going to have a bunch of cards that have alternate art with the character and stuff like that. That if you are a super fan, probably going to be damn cool to have.
Now, with all that said, as you know, I will turn 52 this November. So you do at that point have to start thinking like, hey, there's literally no guarantee I'm still on planet Earth a year from now because hey, stuff happens.
That's fair. That's
You know,
fair. I think I'm like, okay, I will say, not being a big fan of the character, if I'm looking at it from just an investment standpoint on Magic, probably so worth it for me to buy it. It'll be worth more than I'm paying for it. So sure. And all those decks still carry decent value. So sure. Like, I don't have a problem waiting to get one because the reality is I'm probably not going to open it and play with it anyway. It's probably going to sit in my closet for another 3 years and then I'll sell it. So if it doesn't get here for 9 months, whatever, right? Or 10 months, I guess. Like, I'll be okay with that. It
And
wouldn't bother me.
and to be fair, tomorrow's not promised to any of us. I could easily buy something, and have it delivered Friday, and I could get hit by a truck or something. But
Also
uh,
true.
but a whole year out is like, okay, you really got to start thinking about. Good Lord, anything could happen. I might not even still. There's literally no guarantee I'm still playing Magic a year. Well, actually,
Yeah.
I guess hosting a podcast there would be, but
Yeah.
assuming I weren't doing content, there'd be no guarantee I still enjoy the same game a
Yeah.
year from now. Something could happen where, like, you know what? This is the final straw. They could do, I don't know, like you said, Dallas Cowboys secret lair. All right, I'm out. This is too much. I can't
But it
stand it.
could be a New Orleans Saints secret layer.
That would never, even if they
Yeah,
started
it
doing
probably would never
football,
happen.
there's no way it could
Unless they
happen.
did a whole NFL crossover thing there, it's probably not happening for the Saints.
Something I learned very quickly as a Saints fan. If you go somewhere, and like for my wife, I was a Cowboy fan. If you go somewhere wearing a Cowboys jersey, they just say, "Hey, you like the Cowboys." If you go somewhere wearing a Saints jersey, like, "Oh, are you from Louisiana?" Because
Oh
nobody
yeah,
else
yeah.
wears them.
Oh, dude, that and if you got Cleveland Browns gear,
Exactly.
yeah, like that's for real a known
They just
thing.
automatically assume you are from Louisiana, and they're usually right. Or maybe Texas because you moved to Texas
Yeah,
after the hurricane.
I'll say this though, I think it's probably still worth it for a lot of people to get. I think it'd be interesting to see what the market's like, right? Because we've had a lot of stuff when things sell out, they immediately try to list them for sale, knowing they're going to have it shortly, and the price spikes. But how many people now are not going to want to buy it for the higher price? Going like, well, I already know I have one coming.
Yeah.
Like how does that change things? Does that discourage some of the people with their bots from? I think for the first one, they'll still have whatever bots are in there trying to buy the product or whatever, just to try to get the short term win.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see how that affects
If you
stuff.
if you got a bunch of bots, I guess you'll probably get some of the ones that come
Yeah,
immediately.
you'll get
And
some number of them,
then if you
right?
get the ones that come, 7 or 8 months down the road, you just all right, that was I paid my money, I took my chances.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I don't really know, but I'm here for it. I think it's at least worth trying for now, and start seeing what the market looks like a year from now when things start getting delivered, and then we can kind of make a decision. But at least they're trying. And like I said before, somebody at Wizards has to know by not just taking all those orders, you're just leaving giant piles of money on the table. So this automatically is going to push up the bottom line if they can do this even, let's say, 2 more times before the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if that's another couple $1 million that gets added to the bottom line. So we'll see. But all right, dude, that's a lot of good stuff to wrap up on. So where can they find you when you're not doing the show?
All right, you can see me on YouTube over at Age of Wagers as we baseball's still hot, but we are starting to do the fantasy football content because good lord, it's already time for fantasy football content.
Yep, I'm already getting my leagues together because I got a lot to handle as far as that goes. But yeah, you can find me everywhere at PowrDragn, PowrDragn. Got some cool stuff over on the YouTube channel, some new sponsors, and a bunch of things coming out for The Hobbit. A couple of videos already launching this week, so you should go check that out. But as always, wherever you're watching or listening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Please remember to take care of yourselves, your family. Remember to be awesome, but most importantly, be awesome to each other.